Here I have two steering racks. This is from a 1978 Fiat and this is from a 1988 Bertone, and funny enough it has the Fiat logo stamped on the bottom. They are almost identical, but I did notice this is keyed and this section here seems to be crimped or maybe welded on. The top looks the same, but the ignition switch is different. Here is a selection of ignition switches. The one on the left is from a 1978 Fiat. You'll notice that the key is only one-sided and the mount is flat here. And this one is from a 1988 Bertone. You notice that it has a raised section here and the key is now double-sided. And this one is an aftermarket Magneti Marelli. It has a double-sided key and you notice the barrel is very similar to the Bertone one and it was used probably on multiple different Italian cars. I'm now putting some graphite into the barrel to lubricate it and just moving the key back and forth to distribute the graphite inside. So I've got this set up here going to the ignition to test. This light here will be for the standby and this will be for the starter motor. So when I turn the key once, the light will come on and I'm just going to wiggle it around and make sure there's no loose connections. And then I'm going to turn the starter and I'm going to do the same thing again. And we're good. Now the bad design of this is that the brown wire that's here comes from the battery and goes through the switch and then back out the red wire to the starter motor. So all that current has to go through this switch. I've put a relay in the car to bypass this and then take all the load off the switch itself. I'll be reusing the bushes that came with the original steering rack. There doesn't seem to be anything wrong with them. They fit quite well and they don't seem to have any wear or tear. And now just to re-lubricate everything and reassemble it back together. The original grease all migrated away, it was in the wrong positions and wrong spots. I guess over time it kind of dripped down, so this hopefully will make the steering a little bit more smoother. I re-lubricated and then tightened up the U-joint here as well. Just making sure the steering lock is functional and then putting it in place into that slot there and then tightening the back on. And now just testing that the steering lock is working properly. The grille that came with the car was pretty bad and damaged. This one I have on the shelf. It has most of the lugs in place, but it's particularly dirty. So first I'm trying some alcohol here, just rubbed it on, it did nothing at all. And then I tried some polish as well, thinking that might break down the paint on there, and that also did nothing at all. I then started to use some detailing products here, used an agitating brush, but it really didn't do a great job either. I used a little bit of wax and grease remover on this cotton tip and it started to come off. I thought at this point I may as well try a high pressure wash, and that kind of helped a little bit, but again didn't really take the grease off. I found these Dremel polishing tips online and started polishing 700 holes. And after all that I still cannot get everything off. Now I know I shouldn't be using this on plastic, but I can't get this paint off and I figured this is the only way out. So I'm going to start using a cotton tip here, and it managed to remove all the paint piece by piece. It took ages to do and I had to neutralize every single time. The outer section here had a lot of scratches and some paint, so I decided I'd be best off just sanding it down because I'll be recoating it anyway. I'm using a plastic dip or peel coat because it is totally removable with a high pressure hose. This stuff on this application I think will work really well because I can always recoat it if I need to, and the finish is quite good. So I'm taking away these speed nuts. They were obviously used at some point to retain the grille. I'm going to be using the original style plastic type because they don't rust and you can still find them new on eBay. And then to carefully mount the grille and screw it in place. I've placed the fog lamp wire through the grille and the fog lamp sits like this. Normally there's a hole here with a grommet and the wire goes from here to the fog lamp, but I don't want to drill a hole. So now to install the front spoiler. This particular one is an aftermarket fiberglass one. The original one is like a rubbery kind of style, but they all break over time. They're very hard to find. There are two holes that hold the spoiler in place, positioning it like this and then taping it up so it holds in place while I screw it in. There is 3 screw holes that hold the spoiler to the grille. I'm not going to attach them because if I hit the spoiler on something or go over something, it's just going to rip out the grille with the spoiler, plus it's already held on with 4 bolts. And now installing the steering column to the steering rack, I need to do some testing, so I want this in place. These 2 special winged nuts fit into the bottom here and slide back and forth. This gives you some adjustment, but if you look at the actual box itself and turn it around the other way, here's another steering rack. If I put it on here like this, you can see how it would adjust here as well as give you more adjustment in the steering rack itself. However, it has another purpose. This particular one is really badly bent, and that's because it came from a Bertone that was in a rolled accident. You can see here that if you're in an accident, the steering column would push forward and break through this. Without that, the steering column would go straight into you, so it's a great safety feature and you should always use it. Now installing the steering column, there are 2 nuts and 2 bolts that hold the steering column in place. I'm going to be doing some electrical testing, so I'm putting the steering column switch in place and plugging it all in. If you've ever had the problem where the horn is working intermittently or the indicator return is not working properly, it has to do with an adjustment. You can see how the shaft here is sticking out. If I want to make it shorter, I can pull it forward or push it back. That small adjustment makes all the difference to it working properly. I'm installing the original instrument cluster in the car, but we'll replace it later with a new one. And now attaching all the switches so I can do some testing. But next time. I test the electricals and fix the clutch.